Welcome back to the table, friends. I am your humble host, Grady Ems, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hi there.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to answer the question, what will you become if you but dare to try? So with us this week, returning guests, Max and Drake, are going to join us in a discussion of another one of the alternative clans to play. I got a little quote here from their originator. Myself, metamorphosis, ascension. I am that I am. I am the land awakened by blood, no longer a larva. The pupil stage ends for myself and the others. So what clan could we be talking about? Well, the Butterfly clan, right? No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Moth clan.
So we are talking about
Cicadas.
the cicadas. It is time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
We're going to talk about the clan of the Tzimisce, which is the only time I will ever say it that way.
Yes.
So you are all correct. That is the proper way to say it. But
I seen that. That's the way, like, the wiki spells it out.
yeah,
But you watch videos, there's like 4 different ways people say
we
it.
always said the Tzimisce, right?
Yeah.
The Tzimisce. One of the just abominations of using letters to try to make a sound.
Fuck you for putting T and Z together
Like, no, there's a precedent for
to start a word.
You know what this needs? More consonants.
So, quick overview. If someone were to call Tzimisce inhuman and sadistic, the Tzimisce would probably commend them for their perspicacity. I honestly don't know what that
Prospicity. What the
perspicity.
persnickety.
I'm not sure what word you're trying to say.
I have no idea.
Well, they would commend them. And then so the Tzimisce would probably commend them and then demonstrate their mortal definition of sadism was laughably inadequate. The Tzimisce have left the human condition behind gladly and now focus on transcending the limitations of the vampiric state. At a casual glance or a brief conversation, a Tzimisce appears to be one of the more pleasant vampires. Polite, intelligent, and inquisitive, they seem a stark contrast to the howling Sabbat mobs or even the apparently more human Bruja or Nosferatu. However, upon closer inspection, it becomes clear that this is merely a mask hiding something alien and monstrous. So the nicknames are the Fiends, the Dragons, the Voivodes, the Old Clan, the Stokers, and the Flesh Shapers. So right there, I would like to make a statement here. We're about to discuss some stuff, and we're not going to try to go into graphic detail, but just know that if you are triggered by body horror and torture and things like that, don't play Tzimisce. Good, yeah. Just avoid the Tzimisce and like skip to the next podcast because they are villains first. Let's just put it that way. So when we talk about all our clans, any clan, we always talk about the sire of the clan, right? So there's, as always, 2 conflicting stories of the Tzimisce antediluvian. The legend of Irad has it that at some point in the city of Enoch, Irad the Strong sought to purge himself of all evil. Using his mastery of Protean, the ancient gathered all his evil into a bileless mass of repugnancy and horror and spat it out. Irad's intentions was to destroy the mortal who consumed the mass of Protean, thinking that by destroying this mortal, he would destroy the evil as well. But to Irad's surprise, this mortal appeared normal. Irad brought the mortal to his brother Enoch's attention.
Big mistake.
Curious, Enoch embraced the mortal to see what the outcome would be.
I'm just going to try this.
Thus, the world was given the Tzimisce antediluvian. Imagine if, like, okay, let's just go back.
I put my evil in this thing. Let's play with it.
Malkavians sometimes believed that the Malkavian antediluvian was an angel sent by God. And one of the 2 founding heroes, like, I crapped out all the evil in my life and made this dude eat it. Then he turned out to be my dad.
And then just show you how twisted their minds get. They accept that.
Oh,
And like, it doesn't matter who the human was that picked it up because it's what we are now. You know?
I want to know who thought it was a good idea to like, here, I'm going to vomit out all of my evil and then we're going to make it immortal because that's a great idea.
That was what his brother was like. I had an idea. So according to the text in the Library of the Forgotten, Yanash the lawgiver was attracted to the insights of the man that he would embrace. Yanash willed all that made him more than mortal into the vitae that he used to embrace him. Through this, Tzimisce was purer than his brethren. Some scholars draw upon the legend of Irad to believe that Yanash concentrated his beast into the vitae used for embrace, while others believe that Yanash chose Tzimisce for the reason that he believed that the oracle could master the most cruel parts of vampirism. The eldest, which is their term for the antediluvian too, because they believe he is one of the first. The eldest counted itself among the first antediluvians, though it remained apart from them. In its eyes, the other Cainites stagnated in development. They possessed no potential to grow or become greater than when their sires embraced them. The eldest, on the other hand, an oracle in its mortal days, expressed the gamut of evolution's whims and with wondrous flourish. Distraught over its tethered existence, the eldest spent a mortal's age in seclusion and meditation, shifting and flying through shapes of mortal and legend alike, seeking out a form free of the accursed thirst. When all failed, it left the first city and wandered into the east, siring children in the process to expand its own perceptions and study the limitness of form. I know, right? Like
The implications.
a lot of this is just like
It's like not only is he embracing, but he's also experimenting.
Oh. The old clan tell that Tzimisce walked around the world before the deluge and found a city where mortals worshipped infernal entities. Enticed by the concept, but finding the rituals of the tribe wanting, it educated them and was enlightened in turn. This tale has much in common with what was believed about the Bali. There's nothing when your clan has connections to the Bali. This thing going. Eventually, the eldest reached what would later be named Transylvania. There it met a slumbering entity named Kupala, which had been sealed by the lupines and yearned for freedom. Despite great resistance, Tzimisce managed to free Kupala, but could not sever the ties between it and the Carpathian land. Tzimisce lived in the new domain during the deluge, offering escaping mortals the mountain peaks as shelter in exchange for blood. When it was cursed by Cain, the eldest was surprised as it was far from its home and suffered as long as it was disconnected from the ancient land claimed by Kupala. Interesting. The accounts of the Salubri tell that Samuel, child of Salat, challenged Tzimisce in its lair during one of the Bali wars, sensing the taint upon it. The eldest was slain by righteous fire, but managed to take its assailant with it. After the struggle, the Bogatry, the antediluvian's personal guardians, vanished into the night, never to be seen from again. Well, we know that's not true. It then used part of its own essence invested into its childer and reformed itself in the bowels of the Draken.
The Draken.
Yeah. The Draken is one of its, like, 3 children. Specifically, like, its favored childer, who basically, like, kept trying to find new horrific forms to take, which is why he was the Draken.
So he basically reformed himself, and his child gave birth to him.
Oh, if that just the start of weird crap. That, do you want to?
No,
okay. Yeah, I want to give you the room if you need it. The childlike body of the eldest was brought before the Cathedral of Flesh and tended by Yorick, while it listened to Kupala's whispers and learned more secrets from it. Although Yorick sent word to the Bogatry about the eldest's return, they never came back, and the master of the Cathedral of Flesh assumed the mantle of clan leadership while his sire slept. Around 1232, one of the manifestations of I would just like to point out that this is the most history that we have over any antediluvian. This is why it's so terrifying, right? And
obviously it's because this one's screwed up. So, we really go, everybody wants to talk about it. So let's just do it.
There might be another reason too.
Yeah.
Around 1332, one of the manifestations of the eldest was discovered by a young Koldun named Elias Selfrimos in the haven of Terabost Demek Rethuven. Inside the fortress, Elias stumbled upon a long colonnade of stone and wooden columns that led down from a threshold, widening into an enormous circle at its far end. Standing in the middle of the circle was a tree, a massive, wide-spreading tree, a true grandfather of the forest. Still in leaf despite the winter, the wind hissing softly through its branches with a sound like distant whispers. Illis almost thought he heard a voice in it. He instinctively knew a god dwelt there, or being close enough to divinity that the difference hardly mattered. Elias experienced a sensation of walking down to the tree distantly, nearly outside himself. He knelt among the roots of the tree, and the ground filled with fallen leaves that smelled like dried blood. The bark was warm to the touch and felt like skin. Oh, God. Elias laid himself against its bole, and the god welled up within it, welled up within him, like sap rising with the spring. He felt it touching him from within, moving in his blood and soul, running his fingers through his thoughts. Then it spoke softly, urgently, the same voice he had heard in his dreams. The same voice, the same unfathomable tongue, the same sense of insistence, of an urgency so strong it was nearly fear. He begged it silently to make what it needed of him clear, but it did not seem to know how. When the god tree released him, Elias was left with a small crimson seed, which he kept closely. Just every part of this is just like burn, fire. He ultimately ate the seed when his coterie was confronted with the Methuselah Drakon. After making use of the seed, Elias was possessed by the Tzimisce Antediluvian in the Obertus Monastery in the outskirts of the city of Brasov. His body was used to destroy Marcus Musa Giovanni and to impart the young Tzimisce Mika Vikos with the dragon seed of his ancestor. Elias' body could not withstand the force of the being that had spoken and acted through him and dissolved into a fine ash. We haven't even gotten to the Tzimisce history yet. No. We're still on just the antediluvian stuff here. Mm-hmm. The turn of the 15th century, an Anarch leader, Lugio, the Bloodbreaker, used Lugage, yeah, good one. Lugage, the Bloodbreaker, used Lombak Ruthven to locate the Tzimisce Antediluvian. After the crushing of the Sombra Antediluvian, it seemed nothing could stop the Anarchs. I think we have personal history with this part.
Yeah. We were there, man.
With Lugage strengthened by Billabog's diablerie, he led the resistance straight to the ancient Cernog monastery, where it was thought that the Tzimisce Antediluvian was in torpor. A great battle ensued between the Tzimisce guardians and Lugage's mob. However, Tzimisce was not in torpor, and somewhere in the midst of the battle, it secretly subdued Lugage. Through the power of obfuscation, the Tzimisce Antediluvian impaled Lugage on a massive wooden hook, paralyzing him. Tzimisce then flesh-crafted into what looked like Lugage impersonating him. Tzimisce impersonating Lugage then rallied the Anarchs, leading them to think that they had won the battle. Then it took the farce one step further by dispelling the magical protections of torpor and unearthing a flesh-crafted decoy that resembled the Tzimisce Antediluvian and consumed the decoy's blood, making it appear as if Lugage was diablerizing the Antediluvian. Lombok was the only participant to discover the real Lugage impaled and to realize that Lugage standing before him was the Antediluvian himself. Lombok remained silent in terror of his progenitor, who locked gazes with him, knowing that Lombok had observed the truth.
Lombok becomes important again later on.
Yeah, that's the freaking Antediluvian. It's like the Lasombra Antediluvian and the Tzimisce Antediluvian are both like in those places where you're like, oh yeah, and we ate them. And no, we didn't. No, they're out walking around somewhere.
It's like you got a few antediluvians now that are kind of like, they might still be around.
In the Tzimisce Antediluvian's case, he's not walking anywhere. It's more like slithering and growing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's just like, yeah, there's just so much here. I mean, so basically, yeah.
It's like their history kind of becomes uninteresting after the Victorian age, though, because they basically fall apart.
Yeah, the Tzimisce basically, as you can see, the Antediluvian settling in Transylvania, they essentially took Europe before the other forces came, and they centralized their power. And the Carpathians, like the Tzimisce, embraced basically some of his more powerful children. Yorick, Cartier, Billabog, and Drakon, each of these descendants spread both intellectually and physically around the world. While the Tzimisce are now noted for madness, sadism, and metamorphosis like Yorick, creatures like the Drakon show an entirely different side. The Tzimisce are experimenters and creators, whether it be Constantinople or the Cathedral of Flesh. So, yeah.
So what exactly is the Cathedral of
Oh,
Flesh?
I am so glad you asked that question because let's talk here a little bit about.
Because it's been mentioned a few times, like it's just a normal thing. So
This is pretty cool. So the cathedral was the creation, the haven, and the ward of Yorick, a childer of Tzimisce Antediluvian, the clan's preeminent scholar of metamorphosism, and the voivode among voivodes. It was built to protect a germ of the antediluvians' consciousness that Yorick was charged with, and in time it took the form of a harrowing church fortress, sculpted from the flesh of peasants, slaves, rivals, beasts, and any number of other victims that were built into the pulsing, suppurating walls of the structure built by the Methuselah and his retinue over a span of a millennia.
what the fuck?
However, the cathedral was much more than that. It was living, or perhaps undead, vessel of mad collective consciousness. The cathedral displayed some very disturbing ambiance, like a pool of blood lined with sitting victims who you could use as a chair, pillars of grafted bodies, walls of mouths that sang a wailing chorus as you passed them, or the open gallery where corpses remained impaled by stalactites. Those thick stalactites and stalagmites formed the cathedral's pillars, with bone trusses over which limestone grew and formed an osseous mix of liquid architecture. Either skulls, with their eyes or surrounding muscular structure still intact, thin enough to behold a sea of viscera and floating organs, composed the walls. Scores of ghouls moistened the eyes so they could blink properly. Oh my god!
Yeah, it's funny because like a normal human would go into like what the church that's got the ceiling painted by Michelangelo.
Oh, the Sistine Chapel.
Sistine Chapel, yeah.
To a Tzimisce, they go there. That's like their Sistine Chapel.
This is
Oh my god! Look at this. It's fine
just-
work. Fine work.
Hey, are you on spitting in the eyes duty today? Yeah.
They just have like a spray bottle. Okay, blink.
Even more revenants conducted the ritual tattooing by drawing charcoal-dusted threads through the victim's skin with bone needles. Later, Yorick and his childer would carefully slough the flesh from their screaming sacrifices, treat the flesh canvas in a preservative, and stretch it over the windows like a mosaic.
Oh, God.
In 1472, Yorick summoned a guest to the cathedral with the intent of embracing him into Clan Tzimisce. This guest, none other than Vlad Tepes, Dracula, has been prophesized to bear a great influence on the world of the Cainites. Thus, many other influential elders had sought to embrace him into their own clans, if only to prevent him from acting as an agent of some other clan. Although Dracula was initially intrigued by Yorick's offer of the embrace, the cathedral had its own plans. The cathedral, likely acting under the demon Cupola's influence, drew upon the vitae congealed within its living veins to engulf and diablerize Yorick. The cathedral ate its creator. It then attempted to do the same to Dracula and his companions. Dracula and the Cainites managed to flee from the cathedral's squamous clutches, despite the fact that the Cainites had been driven into a mad frenzy by the horror and threatened to consume them. Dracula, having seen the lengths the Cainites would go to amass power over one another, decided that he would still seek out the embrace, but under his own terms, without the vulnerability that came with the blood bond. Well,
I like what you guys are doing, but after last night,
You tried to track me in a Flesh Cathedral once. Shame on you.
I like part of that when they're talking about like the mouths and the walls. I would just start singing a chorus. I take that as they just start screaming.
Oh yeah, it was wailing. Soon after its fatal revolt against its master, the cathedral liberated itself from the Carthaginian soil where it had rested for ages, leaving nothing but a gaping hole in its wake. It eventually became the residence of a group of Bali, led by Ansen, the nominal prince of the Romanian city of Deva. In time, the cathedral tired of the Bali and just simply devoured them in mass. The cathedral was later inhabited by corrupt lupines who formed a loose alliance with Merel, Archbishop of Deva. Its subsequent activities and whereabouts are unknown. It's just walking around out there.
how does it get around?
So it's got some fucked up werewolves living in it. And
Yeah.
oh my God.
That's not the last we're going to talk about the Cathedral of Flesh, though, because stuff gets weird.
I think whoever consecrated that cathedral didn't know what they were doing.
It's like, oh man, I'm just going to keep building. First of all, I mean, maybe like originally he was like, look, I have a nice house, so I need a flesh shed.
No.
And then it got a little ambitious, and he's like, maybe this is like a whole rental.
I need a flesh sunroom. We need to add a flesh second story.
Bedroom is so small.
We have more servants, right? Could we have more like townsfolk up here?
Oh, we need flesh air conditioning in here. It's really moist. Have you heard of the flesh metal roofs? They're lifetime warranty.
So is this the plot
So
behind
you're-
Once Human?
Your lifetime or the house's lifetime?
Okay, so let's go back to the Dark Ages. The Tzimisce Voivote, a loose confederation of Tzimisce domains in Eastern Europe, had survived since the fall of the Second Sidley, only to face new threats to its existence during the Dark Ages. The first threat to Tzimisce power in the region was the emergence of Tremere. Though the Magi of the Order of Hermes were a familiar presence in the region, they invoked the wrath of the neighboring vampires after prying the secrets of vampirism from captured Tzimisce. House Tremere, led by Goratrix, officially became the Clan Tremere in the wake of the Diablerie of Salute. Despite making enemies of the mortal Magi, the Tzimisce, the Salubri, and later the Gangrel Nosferatu, the fledgling Tremere managed to survive the Omen War with the Tzimisce. Voivode of Voivodes, I don't know why they keep saying it that way, Vladimir Rustovic's assault on the Tremere was interrupted by the invasion of the Ventru under Jurgen of Maddenberg. While Jurgen's assault was ended through the efforts of Mikavikos and the Albertus Order, the Omen War continued until the Anarch revolt rendered the Tzimisce incapable of any real organizational efforts as a clan. Despite the Warlocks' continued survival, most Tzimisce continued to bear a grudge against them in the modern era, though many young Tzimisce failed to comprehend why. The Voivote, and with it, the feudal structure of the Tzimisce society would only last a few centuries longer. So, perhaps the most significant thing in the Victorian age for the Tzimisce was the publishing of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Perhaps the most famous novel, although by no means the first, it actually detailed a member of their clan, and a somewhat errant one. It introduced audiences to Transylvania, the home of the clan. However, it was the Victorian age that saw the beginnings of the Tzimisce's decline, once proud and aristocratic. Man, like
Aristocratic.
all the weird words, and all of a sudden the normal words start mixing your brain.
The.
It's the Flesh Cathedral, man. I got too much Flesh Cathedral, man. The modernizing of the world turned them into anarchistic. My God.
Anachronistic.
Where is that Flesh Cathedral? It's time for me to retire. The ease at which mortals could travel and communicate meant that the fiends could no longer exist as lords and rulers of their own fiefdoms. Troubling news of a shambling monstrosities and villagers impaled on pikes would often reach more civilized parts of the globe in no time. Is kind of the problem. It's just like when you're like, for 300 years, we just take a bunch of them and put their heads on pikes, and then everybody, oh, hey, what's that big metal thing they're in now? Oh, hey, they all have fire. Why do they all have fire?
Used to be just as easy as fusing two of them together. Nobody would come
Put
near
a
you.
goat on a few cows' heads and send them out talking, and I'll leave. Science began to shake the iron foundations of the folklore and superstition that the Tzimisce had built their fearsome reputation on. This was truly a double-edged sword for the clan. Their hated enemies, the Tremere, had become very powerful during this time, and the peasants, over which most of the fiends rose up against their masters. Once again, burned from the rotting manses and forced to hide from the kine, most considered the age a great indignity. However, the leaps and bounds made in medicine and the sciences during this time yielded a new crop of potential childhood and a new way to study the effects of mutable forms.
Mm.
The Tzimisce had always been students of a sort, and having biology and anatomy codified, a much easier to learn, their knowledge of the body expanded. So, modern nights, the Tzimisce who bother with politics still remain most populous in the Sabbat. But there's now also a non-insignificant number who have found their way within the Anarch movement, especially the younger, disenfranchised ones, whose ambitions cannot find purchase in other domains and must redirect their impulse to dominion beyond the old ways. Finally, although it's understood by both parties and their presence is barely tolerated, a few other dragons still associate with the Camarilla, mainly for instrumental purposes. The old clan also remains an unliving presence in modern nights, one notable name being the Autarchus Mayumi Shibaski, a powerful kindred corporate who exerts a great deal of influence over the city of Tokyo.
Hmm.
It's kind of weird. Japanese vampires, you don't think that like one of the fiends made it all the way over there? She's like, oh no, it's great. It's corporate. Like we have to make sure that we're all like efficiency focused. And oh, here, Bob, take another head. Okay, no, you got to get 3 hands on the side.
I wonder if it's less the flesh crafting end of it and more of just the mental, breakdown of corporate Japanese culture, where it's just like the honor, and everything like that. It's just like, we're going to take the humanity out of it completely. And we're just going to turn it into this thing where it's just like, everyone has to do their part until it kills them. Like you have to work until, you're just about dead. You have to sacrifice everything to be the salary man. That's what they did. It's like, I didn't even have to craft anybody. I just crafted the morals.
There's some like meeting, like, how can we be more efficient around here? Well, if everybody had 2 extra arms.
I mean,
like, no, what?
It's like you definitely could see like basically a Tzimisce like manager going and they like find one of their employees dead, like on their keyboard, like in mid working, and he's like, "This is honor.
Yeah,
this is what you should all." Everybody's like, "Oh, what? No." No. So, historically, the Tzimisce embraced broods who maintained a particular plot of land. Tied to the land, Tzimisce broods were incestuous, violent hierarchies of hateful creatures who maintained a bare modicum of civility through raw power and blood bond. The central government of the Tzimisce, so to speak, was the Council of the Voids, guiding by the Viceroy. The Viceroy was elected by his peers, but his tenure was set for life. However, given the jealousy and suspicion among the clan, there was a relatively regular progression of viceroys as one another fell to the political or physical trap set by another ambitious clan member. It's like the Stardust, the whole thing with like the brothers. Mm-hmm. Like the last brother alive is the one that like inherits the thing, but they all start killing each other immediately. Like the dad just like, good job.
Proud of you boys.
Let's see. The council had anywhere from less than a dozen to nearly 100 members during the Dark Ages, making it the single most influential factor in clan politics. With the elimination of this hierarchy during the Anarch Revolt, the Tzimisce have become intensely solitary creatures. They now tend to embrace more unusual individuals. Psychopaths and sadists are common choices as the people who indulge in self-mutilation. However, intelligence and dignity are still key concerns. The Tzimisce would choose Hannibal Lecter over Leatherface any day of the month.
Makes sense.
It's just like...
Makes total sense.
Even they're like, oh, no. So what kind of person should you be if you're going to be like a killer, just like a sadist? But like, no, you can have class. That's fine.
You can't just let any raving lunatic into here.
Within the Sabbat, the Tzimisce are the spiritual leaders and scholars, in contrast with the Lasumbra's preference for leadership and temporal power. While the Lasumbra are the cardinals and bishops, the Tzimisce prefer being pack priests or priestki, or even not having titles at all and focusing on personal development. Some people even ponder, out of earshot of course, that the Tzimisce are not very sincere in their attachment to the sect, and that the only reasons they are even present among the Sabbat is their dislike of Camarilla clans, especially the Tremere, and not fitting with the Camarilla's policy of hiding among humans. Tzimisce tend to see that humans are mere playthings below their consideration. However, those Tzimisce who show genuine dedication to the Sabbat ideal are paragons of the sect, impressing and even scaring other Sabbat with their fervor and contributions. That's a good point. Like, which is worse? Like finding like some priest of some pact who's just like, oh man, I must like craft the flesh of this child. And you're like, oh, I don't think he believes. Or the one who's like, I will make you a best servant of the Sabbat has ever seen. You're like, oh, whoa. No, I will make all the children of the Sabbat.
I just think it's funny because they're kind of one of the founders of the Sabbat, along with like the Lasambra, but their nature is, like they want to rebel against their elders, they want to consume them kind of thing. But they're the worst when they're the elder in power kind of thing.
They are like,
you become what you
monsters. Yeah, we are the monsters. So Tzimisce and Antitribu, which is interesting. In the Sabbat sense, the Tzimisce of the Sabbat are themselves the Antitribu, as the Sabbat reject clan identity as a legacy of antediluvians they so despise. In a non-Sabbat sense, there are no Tzimisce in Tichibu, strictly speaking. The Tzimisce are not widely political creatures to begin with, merely territorial, and their choice of allegiance reflects this. The vast majority of politicized Tzimisce do belong squarely to the Sabbat, and most others are young dragons who have joined the Anarchs in a sense of greener pastures. This is barely even a handful of Tzimisce in the Camarilla, and those few are only there for personal reasons and tend to leave once their objectives are completed. The presence of the Tremere virtually guarantees that the Tzimisce have no interest in remaining in the Camarilla. Even before the rise of the Sabbat, the Tzimisce viewed their mortal charges as little more than sophisticated forms of herd beast. Following the Anarch revolt, the majority of Tzimisce have abandoned lordship in favor of their own projects. To purify their thoughts and detach themselves from human subjectivity, Tzimisce either founded or developed various Sabbath paths of enlightenment. These beliefs and rituals serve diverse purposes, endearing solidarity among vampires, providing new habits to replace the human learned ones, and fostering an understanding of what it means to be a vampire. As a result, the Tzimisce are intensely focused on the vampiric condition. They gladly abandon their humanity in favor of the paths of enlightenment, and they have spent more time thinking about their state than any other clan. One of the immediate results of this is the Sabbat culture is derived from medieval Tzimisce culture. Traditions such as the Valduri derive from Tzimisce custom. So basically a lot of, when we were talking about the Sabbat, like a lot of their fire ceremonies and stuff like that all like kind of come from local Tzimisce, the whole shovel head thing too. Tzimisce also use vicissitude as a solution to a variety of problems that would not occur to a vampire possessed of a conscience. Unlike the other rulership clans, the Venture or the Sombra, Tzimisce have no particular faculty for dominate. As a result, they rule their subjects not by mind control, but through sheer fear, using creative applications of vicissitude to strike that fear home. Giant sculptures of living flesh, tables made from ghouled children, lovers glued together and transformed into dogs. All of these are tools for a sufficiently insightful Tzimisce. The most infamous of these creations, the Schlachta and Vozd, are used as bodyguards and tanks. I'm just not going to look that up. I think we're all better not knowing what either of those things are. A particularly interesting phenomenon, which is practically exclusive to the Tzimisce, is the existence of revenants. Revenants are families of ghouls maintained continuously by the Tzimisce who serve as mortal pawns and possible candidates for the embrace. Centuries of vampiric contact, infusions of vampiric blood, and inbreeding have transformed the revenants into a distinct type of supernatural creature. They produce a weak vampiric-like vitae, which sustains their bodies far beyond the average human lifespan. So though not immortal, revenants can live to be hundreds of years old and also gives them the ability to use disciplines. Revenants are fanatically loyal to their vampiric masters and consider themselves superior to the average human as well as regular ghouls. This added to their treatment by the Tzimisce, and their inbred, unsavory lifestyles have shaped their mindsets into completely alien directions. Most revenants could never function as normal human beings. The 4 revenant families also provide the Tzimisce with a very diverse breeding stock, giving the clan much flexibility in its membership. Warriors, scholars, aristocrats, and freaks are all found in equal measure among the revenants.
One of these things is not like the other.
3 normal things and something screwed up.
Although there are other revenant families in the world of darkness, the 4 Tzimisce families are the Bradoviches, the Obertus, the Grimaldi, and the Xantoses. It is an unpleasant fact that some kindred that a large portion of the Tzimisce culture revolves around ways and means of hurting other beings. Many kindred would understandably prefer to ignore or gloss over this aspect of the clan. Still, Tzimisce are dubbed fiends for a good reason, and the information from that perceived evil as the clan Tzimisce may be particularly useful to those used to a more benevolent Camarilla perspective. I don't think we need to go into how they torture people. Let's go skip over to hospitality.
Well, like how they don't torture people.
Yeah, it's the hospitality part.
Hospitality.
The rites of the treatment of guests form an indelible part of Tzimisce culture. There are many archaic rules considering deportment, manners, greetings, goodbyes, allowances, and settlement of grievances. But there are few clan-wide obligations that are always honored. A guest of Tzimisce is always entitled to several things. It's actually an important part. I think we ran into this too. Yeah. Shelter and nourishment for 3 days and 3 nights, not counting the night of arrival. the protection of the host against third-party aggressors, suspension of inter-family grievances for the duration of the stay, the best quarters in the home of the host up to and including the host's own chambers. However, the guest also has a few obligations that make them worthy of such special treatments. A ritual exchange of gifts or services upon arriving, departing, or sometimes both, respecting the host's boundaries and property, not needlessly angering the host or any of his family, not staying any longer than the requisite 3 days and 3 nights unless invited to. The balance of these laws is to ensure there's no advantage it's taken either in the host or the guest. A fiend's honor can be completely shattered by infringing upon either one of these sets of rules. Given the warfare that exists between the lineage of the Tzimisce, exercising patience and honoring these laws is a way to ensure that there's always some sort of neutral ground where combative families can meet and prevent any further outrages.
That seems pretty civilized.
Yeah. It's kind of cool. Like when if you've been accepted into a Tzimisce's house and you've got 3 days and 3 nights before
To get the fuck
into
out.
a flesh monster. The older Tzimisce is, the more serious they treat these laws, for they remember the nights when the only shelter to be had was the one that was in the domain of a rival of the void, when traveling was arduous and the only undertaking was necessary. Most elder Tzimisce respect these laws in modern nights, but their grandchildren may not even be aware these laws exist, much less still enforced in the ancestors' domains. Minor breaches can be forgiven, though some effort must be made to show that the trespasser is apologetic. Major breachers can be fixed to Tzimisce's reputation to a very bad way. Slaughtering guests during the day is a way to surely make sure no one comes visit you or ever wants to make a deal. All right. So then we get to embraces. Historically, Tzimisce have viewed mortal life as largely irrelevant before the embrace. While they do look for specific mortal characteristics, they tend to see this as the barest flicker of potential rather than a compelling argument. Tzimisce embraces are supremely selfish, often based on the specific obsessions or interests of the sire rather than any distinctive characteristic of the child. Those with interests matching their own are particularly prized, and many Tzimisce child are masters of their field in life, whether this field was medicine or serial murder is a trifling distinction. That said, the Tzimisce have a reputation for choosiness, largely from a general disdain for mortals. The Tzimisce have particularly addressed this by instituting breeding programs around mortals, resulting in the ghoul families, as we talked before. So yeah, doesn't that make you feel special?
Oh,
Yeah.
For the Tzimisce, just great. So pulling back a little bit, let's talk about the game terms. We already talked, they were known as fiends, dragons, voids, the old clan, stokers, flesh shapers. We did talk about their disciplines are animalism, dominate, and protean. Protean inhabiting most of the vicissitude, current, stuff. It's weird that they had to work with dominate too on some of them to get the amalgams, because you have to be like, no, I can make flesh do stuff, but I have to also tell it what to do.
Yeah.
It obeys my command.
Their bane, grounded, each Tzimisce must choose a specific charge, a physical domain, a group of people, an organization, or even something more esoteric, but clearly defined and limited. The kindred must spend their day sleep surrounded by their chosen charge. Historically, this has often meant slumbering in the soil of their land, but it can also mean being surrounded by that which they tonight rule, a certain kind of people, a building deeply tied to their obsession, a loyal counterculture faction, or more outlandish elements. If they do not, they sustain aggravated willpower damage equal to their Sabbat severity upon waking the following night.
So there's a good chance this is like, I can't get home tonight. I'm dead.
It's more like they wake up and they're like, I frenzy immediately.
Yeah.
Their compulsion, covetousness. When a Tzimisce suffers a compulsion, their kindred becomes obsessed with possessing something in the scene, desiring to add it to their proverbial hoard. This can be anything from an object to a piece of property to an actual person. Any action not taken towards this purpose incurs a 2 dice penalty. The compulsion persists until ownership is established. In the case of a non-magic, or the object of desire becomes unattainable. So I mentioned that we'd go back to that whole concept of the Flesh Cathedral.
Yeah.
So tonight, no one knows where the Cathedral of Flesh is located, though stories of its survival persist. Indeed, those who know of the ways of the Tzimisce suggest that multiples of the cathedral may have been spawned in parthenogenesis from the original. Others argue that the
budding.
cathedral is now the body of the antediluvian itself, an enormous unholy church that slakes its thirst on those who foolishly or defiantly brave its halls. The massive mutated form of the Tzimisce antediluvian that currently lies beneath New York City is described as having formed a cathedral in flesh. Although it's directly stated that this cathedral was created by the eldest from its own flesh and vitae, so not the original one.
Yeah, because that Rambach Luthven guy, he, like, during, like, lead up to the final nights kind of thing, he finds it. And it speaks to him and offers, like, would you like to become a part of me? And he runs away screaming.
Good choice.
He tries to tell anybody that will listen that, like, it's alive, it's down there, it's going to get us. And nobody cares.
Yeah, in a lot of the tellings of the antediluvian, like post like Victorian era and stuff like that, he became obsessed with this kind of concept of like stretching out and becoming more and like becoming something else. And there's like where the seed of him spread through the underside of New York and just decided to see what it could become and just continue stretching and working its way through the underbelly of one of our most populous cities in the world.
I don't remember.
It's just like a colony of slime and fungus.
Yeah, that's the thing is he kept working through different forms. Like he'd try like, well, I'm going to try becoming fungus. Now I'm going to try becoming this different like slime base. And he just kept turning into different things to see what would.
I don't remember the subway having a sphincter.
It's the Tremere go down into the subway and like, oh, this is not my stop. No, I do not want to be here at all. Oh boy. Yeah. So what do you guys think of the fiends?
Very interesting, very creepy.
Yeah.
If you heard any of that stuff and you're like, oh man, that's really cool, then you'd want to make it some
Join our table.
It's like your goal, I think, would be like you're standing in a room full of killers, monsters or vampires. If they turn around and look at you and go like, oh, what is wrong with you? You succeeded. You're in Tzimisce.
Yeah, I think they're very interesting. I think you got to play them kind of at their peak of like, as first history. Modern day Tzimisce are a little like weird. You're probably just going to be like a shovelhead, like you don't understand anything about the clan.
To me, it'd be like if you're playing D&D as like a chaotic evil character, like you're handicapping yourself because nobody wants you around.
Right.
The things that you're prone to do, you're not going to just be able to do.
Yeah, you could definitely be a detriment to the party. It's more, but it's also interesting is like if no one knows what you are, like you don't even know what you are. But then one day you're like, oh no, like I'm a gangrel, right? Because I can have like claws, and you're like, that's not the way gangrel claws look.
Those are just really long fingers.
Why do all your claws have eyeballs at the end of them? Look, it's I can see.
No, they're teeth. I got teeth at the end, so I can bite when I claw.
Yes,
yeah. Like one of the Mika Vikos becomes Sasha Vikos. Like they have mouths lining their body and they can all speak at the same time. And it's like it's supposed to be super unnerving to people.
They're all talking about something different.
Just that thing. It's like the darkest version of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. It's like, what if like you have unlimited potential, but instead you're like, no.
I embrace the monster.
I go the other way. You're just like, guys, I have figured out amazing things to do with parts of my bodies that you would be surprised. Like, I don't want to know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
They're super fun to play if you could fit them into a campaign because there's problems with it,
Yeah.
They're mostly Sabbat. You can't really be Camarilla without giving up vicissitude because that was one of the things. If they're in a Camarilla, they can't use vicissitude.
No.
But they also have access to like Goldonic sorcery, which is like nature magic.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
They have kind of weird because it's that whole tie with their land.
The demon they found in the Carpathians that they went, we'll free it. And the werewolves are like, why the fuck would you do that?
Why not?
And someday you can turn yourself into a beautiful flesh painting and the Ghostbusters will have to come after you.
Yes, Vigo.
That just made me wonder like how much of Tzimisce lore and powers they just literally just took from Dracula,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
And the fact that they call them in modern day stokers. you
Yeah.
know, like they're just like, oh, it's Stoker. I don't know. So, okay. So now that we've rounded out, we've done the Banu Hakim, we've done the Tzimisce, we've done the Lasombra, we've done the Setites. Out of those 4 clans, which is the one you don't want to go down an alley and meet?
For me, I don't like body horror, so
Yeah.
Tzimisce is my go.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, there's a whole thing about if you're just being killed and eaten, you know, like, yeah, Lasombra or Assamite.
This might probably do it quick.
Yeah. They're not there to prolong it, enjoy prolonging it,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Just get it over with.
And the other thing is like, what's worse, just, you know, knowing you're going to die or knowing that this thing doesn't necessarily want to kill you. It just wants to keep you alive for as long as possible for its amusement.
Mhm.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd rather take the quick death than to spend the next 4,000 years as a head on a wall.
Is that like yeah, you have like the best situation is basically the Assamite, right? Because like you don't see it coming. It's just like your Ash.
Mhm.
The next one is like, okay, Lasombra, they're gonna basically get some aggression out on you. They're gonna be a bully. You know, you're gonna be some like, you know, well, you're in the abyss and your head's gonna be ripped off or something like that. Then you go into like the Setite, and then you're like, you just hope that they kill you and don't go deal with your family or anything you love, right? And not like that they would torture, just that anything they touch is like you don't want them to do that.
So my whole thing is, if with the 3 clans minus the Tzimisce, those 3 clans, if you just go down a dark alley and see them, probably nothing's going to happen unless they're actively after you. Tzimisce is going to be like, hey, something fun. Assamite and the Lasombra, if they're after you, you're fucked no matter what. The Setite, if they're after you,
You might go home.
yeah, you're probably going to go home thinking everything's all right. And then your life falls apart around you. Everybody you know starts suffering. But you probably don't know why that's happening.
I love that the greatest thing you can say about the Tzimisce, this comes back from like when we were playing, was that you have a clan dedicated to corruption and horrible endings, and they're not the scariest thing in the world.
Well, like when we played, you know, it came down to, you know, a Setite asking the masters, like, well, you know, we want to spread corruption, right? Well, what about this town that the Tzimisce runs? And they're like, we're good. It's actually worse than what we do.
Eventually, it'll just happen normally. Like, you don't have to worry about that group right now.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think when we go and we start talking about our conversations about Florida,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think we can revisit and like, we can find some interesting, like some ways to bring modern day Tzimisce in that are not just like the shovelhead,
Yeah.
kind of people. But
I mean, okay, so have you listened to our discussions about Florida Vampire?
Yes.
Okay. So like we kind of talked about what the Setites would be. Like I kind of felt like they would be the head of an HOA. Did we talk about Lasombra?
well, because those aren't out yet, so they
Okay.
can't
yeah.
have heard those yet.
Yeah.
We did.
It was it was like Nosferatu.
Yeah, we were talking.
Being ingrained into
Right. The bayou,
yeah.
the swamp people. Yeah.
Yeah, what are the Lasombra in like Florida?
I don't
That's
know.
interesting because they're going to be like aggressive bullies because they're just kind of like mean,
Mhm.
you know. So like, I wonder what kind of things like they hang out on like the bars, and the sunset, like, you know, the beach after dark, and be like,
I feel like they would be like the Proud Boys, like the kind of, you know, very aggressive my way or the highway sort of thing.
It's like Bruja would be like the Daytona Bike Week guys.
oh yeah,
They just
Oh, yeah,
all show
yeah,
up in
yeah.
mass and fuck the town up for
Yep.
a week or so. Lasombra, they'd just be all over.
yeah. I'm just trying to think of like, so they're going to have the tie to basically their kind of Spanish roots.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I do think like maybe they are like the drug cartels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, and then like just the people around the drug cartels were just like, oh no, you don't want to do that. You don't wanna you mentioned it, so now I have to deal with it.
Right.
Like, ew, you know, yeah, I think that the Banu Hakim definitely would just start being the police.
Yeah.
They're like they're the dude from Midnight Mass. You know, like he's just like, I'm here literally to help you guys. Like literally, my thing is, why are you fixating on who? And they're like, oh no, you used to be part of the Sabbat. It's like, no, like I'm literally trying to be the best sheriff I can be here.
I kind of feel like they would be like the bail bondsman bounty hunters.
Oh
They're
god.
just like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, because like literally every day it's just like, here's a list of people.
Just hunting down. Like,
They all broke the law.
This is awesome. We have employment for years. This is great.
This is a Law and Order county, buddy.
Oh my god! And the Tzimisce are the plastic surgeons.
Oh, now you found it. There's a direct line.
That's why you're getting all these like unreal, unnatural plastic surgeries. The
It's like you
freaking
go in there for like some, huge Hollywood looking backdrop, and the guy's got his like office with his collection of memorabilia, and there's just that little picture of some disturbing like woman dressed up as like a nurse that you're just like, weird. Oh, that's one of my old things. Yeah. This
That's
is
like
horrible.
that's where you get all the like, what's her name, Courtney Cox. Like, have you seen her since she
Oh,
got
yeah.
all of her plastic surgery?
See, like the Tzimisce's like masterpiece would be like a Michael Jackson.
Oh,
He's like, look at it. He's perfect. He is perfect.
What are those twins? The two guys that they're basically like potato heads now because they got so much filler and crap in their faces. Their jaws are like 6 inches below their chins.
yeah, that is like the first thing you would do too if you were a freshly embraced Tzimisce that was not like turned into a frontline fighter, right?
Mhm.
You start wandering around and you're like, man, I'm gonna do tattoos. I'm gonna do piercings. I'm gonna do all this weird. Oh, you want to look like a lizard? I'll make you look like a lizard. Just
It's like they would own tattoo shops
Oh.
up and down like the boulevard.
and they were like, I could do things with your arm here that we just slow. And you're like, oh, that's cool. I didn't realize I had a giant hole that I can now see through. Yeah.
Do you guys split tongues here?
Yeah, how many do you want? Do they all need to be in your mouth?
I've had this idea for a while. I got a few body parts on hold. I'll be right back. Oh.
Let me tell you, I'm going to run this past you. Extra mouths.
Places you'd be surprised. Well, yeah, I'm very surprised that anybody would listen all the way through this.
Anywhere you got a hole, I'm going to put a mouth.
I think I'm going to have to take a shower after this. Right. Does anybody have any final thoughts about the Clan of Fiends?
Yeah, get rid of them.
Be wary.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, do not diablerize the Flesh Cathedral.
It's boundless. You can just keep gnawing on it every day. Just take a little bit for yourself. It just shrinks back to a flesh shed.
Flesh.
All right. Well, we will hopefully see you guys later with a little more rationale and a little less body horror. So,
Hey.